We're talking with Warrior Business Unit Manager, Senior Unit Business Manager, Billy Bing. And is Billy okay, or do you want to go by Bill or William? Or
I go by Billy.
That's what everybody pretty much calls you. Bill, you've been involved with Warrior now for over 12 years. And my first question is going to sort of set the tone for the rest of the interview. I've just purchased 50 new Warrior burn helmets. Warrior's had a history of being in the helmet business and maybe not necessarily being as successful as STX or as Cascade. And all of a sudden, if you watch a college game now on the weekends, you can't not – every team is wearing burns. So is that typical of where Warrior is headed? They've always been in the sort of the forefront of R&D. And talk about a little bit of the evolution of burn and its short-term success.
Yeah, I mean, so at Warrior, it's a key focus for us. I mean, when we got into the game, we were, a handle brand. And then over time, we got into some other categories, heads noticeably, and, into protective. Our focus year in, year out is really to be really push innovation always, but focus is always really in those lacrosse heads, handles, and then helmet is an opportunity for us as a brand. We've been in the space for you guys might remember like the Strike brand was kind of how it started, and then it eventually evolved into Warrior. So if you go back to the Strike days, I mean, that was probably 15 plus years ago. But under Warrior, we've been making helmets for a little over 10. But we're real excited about the launch of the burn helmet back in 2019. It's just a really good balance between being innovative, having a lot of technology, whether it's impact performance, which is ultimately the name of the game with keeping players' heads safe. We have our BOA fit system in there to really allow guys to have a custom fit. But the big leap there with that was really nailing the aesthetic. We really transformed what a Warrior helmet was with that burn helmet product, and the acceptance has been terrific. Things take time. All products, new products, take some soak time before they really start to you see the potential. And we're really a couple years in on that burn helmet, and we had a pandemic in the middle. The cancellation of 2020 season, kind of limited some of that momentum we were seeing there building. But we're excited about where the helmet category is going for us. We'll have new products coming in the very near future. Just to kind of build off the success of what you're seeing with the burn out there right now.
When you decide to get into this new helmet, you kind of sit down with a blank piece of paper. Is that fair?
Yeah.
I mean,
it was a new canvas for sure. We had some things that were working, and we had some things that needed to be improved. But I would say the canvas was pretty clean, and we started from scratch and really built from the ground up with that one.
I don't know that necessarily innovation as much as just technique putting into it. You sell the helmet in sizes. You can buy mediums and larges. Not every, I got kids, my high school and my college programs, you got kids 5'8", you got guys 6'5". Well, I got a melon the size of Montana, and I wouldn't get into an extra large burn. So my point to it is you did some really cool things with fit, and with concussions being at the forefront of almost every contact sport, that becomes, I'm assuming, the thrust of where you kind of push the envelope to start with?
Yeah, I mean, in lacrosse, there's a lot of helmets that are kind of one size fits most. Through research and digging into the data, associated with concussions and helmet, we did to do a 3-size helmet. One, having the proper size helmet, proper fit is important. And we understand, 3 sizes might not be as convenient when you're trying to fit your college team or your high school team, but it ultimately is better for the player's safety that he gets into the right fit. Also with 3 sizes, we were able to expand, how many heads it's tough. with head sizes, they vary, the shape. So, we did widen our spectrum so we fit more kids, so our large is larger than any helmet we had made to date. So we do fit some of the larger head kids that could be 16 or they could be 21. So with that, 3 sizes is important to us. Getting the right fit's important. And, that's just one part of the story with that burn. Obviously, there's other technology built in there too.
When you sit down with R&D to start the process, is the safety the first? What's on the list of considerations? Is safety first? It's design. I get the design part of it.
Yeah.
But sort of talk about maybe give me an idea as a novice of, I'm putting this idea together. What goes in? Is it looking like, is the aesthetics the last thing? Is it the aesthetics the first thing? And you kind of walk me through briefly what the process is.
So internally, safety is always important. One, you have to meet we have to meet a standard, that's been created by NOXI. Those standards continue to evolve, so you always kind of want to stay up and stay ahead. But to the consumer, that conversation changes, to mom and dad, safety is important. To kids, it's tough to get them beyond aesthetics. Aesthetically, they want it to look good. And then it kind of goes into fit and comfort. And then safety kind of is that third bucket to a consumer, unless they're a parent. But internally for us, safety is extremely important. We want to keep players safe, but we also have, there's a balancing act. We got to make sure that it fits right, it's comfortable, because if a kid puts it on, if it's not comfortable, they're not going to buy your product. And then aesthetically, it has to look, fast, it has to look good.
The previous helmets didn't look like much else in the marketplace. This helmet looks much like everything else in the marketplace. Was that a very specific idea and thought process? You're sitting around the corporate board, the design board, kind of trying to figure out how that part of that process works, which goes back to the aesthetics?
Yeah, when we briefed that project, a big part of the brief was, our Evo family of helmets had a more of like a roundish aesthetic, more, I don't want to say bulbous. And with the new burn, the goal was to kind of get faster lines. So in industrial design, we looked at a lot of cars, automobiles, especially, sporty automobiles. There's a lot of fastback, spoiler. There's just all these built-in lines that really can add to the dimension of a car, but it also can add to the dimension of your helmet. So we had more of that language flowing front to back, and that put us more in line with what consumers are used to seeing from our competition. And our competitors have been making helmets, for well over 25 years with a pretty distinct aesthetic. It's been fast, and we knew we had to get our version of that.
Are you surprised at the amount of market share it's taken early on? Does that surprise Warrior?
No, I don't think it's a surprise. We've always knew there's a great opportunity for another brand to be in the space. We think there's more opportunity to come. The burn is still really new. It's essentially 2 years old, but we didn't have a season, and that really kind of limited probably the number of helmets you would see this season. Had we had a season last year, just things take soak time. People need to see other people wearing a helmet to kind of fuel their buying habit or their buying change. So we think the best is still to come for burn. And we also, we're looking out 2-3 years right now in the helmet category, and we feel really good about, obviously the opportunity. It's really one guy that's owning the show. And it's really quite unheard of. When you look at consumer products, there's really no other space where somebody has such a presence. So we're excited. It gives you, a coach, a parent, just another choice. And we know lacrosse consumers like options.
I asked the question earlier last year on the show. Matt Brown and Bill Turney both. Denver is one of the teams that was premiering the helmet, and Matt had said off the camera, we were talking about helmets. He says you got to give these things a try. So we got all three of the best leaders in the house and had the kids try them on, and then I tried one on, and it was clearly. I don't want to sound like I'm working for Warrior, because that's really not the point. I was just amazed at the question. The one question I had was, the face mask bars generally are at the top are straight up, and you guys got a little bit of a 45-degree angle on the side. And it actually gives you better sight lines with peripheral vision, which I thought goes back to the designer part of this whole thing. Little things you don't think about.
Yeah, vision's key. I mean, we brief products with industrial design and development. I mean, they're looking at every detail. We didn't touch on vision, but vision's obviously extremely important. Tilt in the world of helmets is extremely important in our sport. Tilt isn't really too much of a thing in any other helmet category. So all those things are factored in to make a really successful product, and those details are important.
Welcome back to the third show of the second season for Michigan Lacrosse Review. My name is Greg Norman, your host. We're lucky enough to have with us a high-ranking Warrior business unit manager, but a sort of a product guy, usually kind of coming through the R&D department. And Billy, you're a local. You went to Notre Dame Prep. You played 4 years in the golden era of the MCLA when Oakland had its heyday. And you spent a little bit of time working in mortgage banking, but you have an applied science degree and a marketing degree, I believe, from Oakland University. Am I not mistaken?
Yeah.
Was Warrior the place you eventually wanted to land? Is that kind of how everything's got started?
Yeah. My roots go back to Warrior, back to almost the beginning. My mom worked at Warrior when I was in high school and for a part of the time I was in college, so I was always pretty connected to the brand. I would do, short-term kind of part-time work there, whether it was making lacrosse handles, packing orders, stocking inventory over the years. But lacrosse has always been a passion. I've been involved in the game for, in terms of playing, and obviously now from a professional standpoint, over 25 years. But when I was in college, I was doing internships, and a lot of guys I played with, or even players that played for my stepdad, Ron Hebert, who were all working there. So I had kind of a pretty, I had a family and a network there. But after I graduated, I kind of wanted to go do something different, knowing that Warrior was definitely something that would be probably something I would seek out over time. But the way it worked out, things were accelerated a bit, if you can believe this. So I left Quicken in 2008, and when I left, mortgage rates were 7%. Yeah. So
wow.
People today are getting 30-year loans at 2 3/4. So the business had come to a pretty it was quiet, and I was still young and pretty flexible in terms of being able to make some career changes. So Warrior at the time had acquired Brine, and they were transitioning that brand and in-house to here in Warren, Michigan. So that was opening up more doors in terms of product management, product development. And that was when I really took it more serious, because a lot of people were already, there were guys just a little bit older than me that were in those positions, and it was going to take, quite a bit of time before I would have maybe had an opportunity. But this opened the door faster. Went in, had to start in, customer service and work my way up. But it was exciting because I got to learn all different facets of the business. I went into operations. I was a buyer for a variety of brands and learned our supply chain. And then eventually moved into product management. And I was the product manager for Bryan Men's Lacrosse at the time. And about 3-4 years down the road there, then I got into managing the Warrior category and then managing essentially a team now of product managers, developers, designers, and engineers.
We should mention for those living under rocks that Dave Morrow was the founder of Warrior, brother Rice guy who started the program from scratch and built it. Was New Balance the owner when you came aboard in 2008, or was it still owned by Dave?
Yeah, I think I get the years a little. I think like 05 was when Warrior was purchased by New Balance, and then 07 or 08 was when then the Bryan acquisition also happened. But yeah, so the New Balance, we've been under New Balance since I've been on board.
I should point out that you're not only involved with and I just a point of information, Warrior Hockey, Bryan Soccer, Bryan Field Hockey. There's a variety of product under the Warrior umbrella, under the New Balance umbrella. Did the corporate change, and answer, don't answer, but did the corporate change to New Balance just give the company more backing, more opportunity to sort of field out a little bit more of what's possible?
I wasn't as involved in kind of, the whys and things at the time, but at the end of the day, being a part of a terrific brand like New Balance, it does allow us to have access to a lot more resources, a lot more technology. There's a lot of shared aspects to the business that drive efficiency, drives advancement, whether it's product or just in how we do business. So we do get to piggy off of, because their scale is so much larger, it does open up a lot of doors for us that I wasn't as a part of it, probably didn't exist, early on for Warrior. But the partnership's been great. They've allowed us to flourish and do what we do well. I think it's opened doors for both groups. They're soft goods focused and we're all hard goods, but the doors that are being opened for us to sell and get distribution, both kind of complement each other very well.
R&D is an important part of your product line and what you guys do as a company. If you're looking at, let's take a shaft. You guys are obviously a shaft and a head company. I mean, that was the primary focus of where you started. What's next? And kind of walk us through, okay, there's a new shaft coming out in 2012. How long does it take to develop a product? Kind of walk us through that, because I want people to understand this isn't, it just sort of kind of falls off the shelf. There's a lot of work that goes into this, and kind of explain that, because I'm not sure anybody really knows, and that's kind of why we wanted to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, I mean, so at a high level, and a lot of brands are kind of similar, is we're all on like 2-year cycles, and every other year you're rotating. So we have really 2 families of product now, an Evo family and a Burn family, and we rotate every year, or rotate each family every other year. But our development cycles, depends on the how technical the product is. Some products require sometimes 2 to 3 years, and then there's some where we're able to execute in call it 12 to 14 months. As we do market research and we think about our line plans and things we want to accomplish, if it's depending on how revolutionary we're going for, the earlier you got to kick it off, and that's kind of how we kind of drive the business.
Material and the cost of material is an important factor in that development of the marketing plan. You can't put out I think sail racing, where a mast on a new sailboat now is $200,000 for some of the world-class boats because it's all carbon fiber.
Yeah.
You could probably build a carbon fiber I think back to the Kennys when they had Scorpion and they had Serpent, that whole line. They were good shafts, but it cost $9,000 for a shaft. The materials just didn't work out. So I got to think that's got to be part of that discussion, right?
Yeah, early on. So I mean, we're always looking at we're always vetting new materials, whether it's handles, heads, and then in helmets, there's a lot of options out there too from a technical standpoint. You try to be you want to keep the creative process going. You want to keep pushing innovation. So, there is a balance between, kind of, saying no to an idea versus kind of, vetting it further and seeing how you can shape it, mold it, maybe make it to where it's commercial. But at some point you do have to really look at the commercial viability of something, because, you don't want to bring something to market that, is going to be too expensive and not sell, or just, it's not, it's not profitable ultimately. But, we like to vet those things pretty seriously at a certain point, because you either look at your options. Hey, is there alternatives? How do we adjust? Or, do we have to go in a totally different direction?
When you get something in a marketplace, a niche product like a face-off head that we all know eventually breaks down. So you take that back to the lab and say, listen, the guys that are taking face-offs, if you look at like Greg Arulian can snap, and he's just such a powerful guy. You obviously have to make a head stronger. You do make face-off heads. So is that the kind of thing you look at from a marketplace where you take that back and decide that maybe it's not the best attack shooting head on the marketplace, but it's great for face-offs because of those kinds of things? Is that part of what you go through?
Yeah, I mean, through just market research, I mean, we're essentially in the business of solving problems, and finding product solutions to fix a problem, or give a player an advantage, or improve his performance. What you alluded to in the face-off head is the face-off space has obviously evolved a lot in the last 15 years. When I played, the guy taking face-offs was usually the most, you just used a regular offensive head. Today, and we talk about it, it keeps us on our toes from a development standpoint. Lacrosse is pretty complex in terms of the number of different athletes we have to make product for and what they look for in their product. You touched on face-off heads. It was quickly, as the face-off was evolving and the actions and the mechanics of how they would try to win a face-off were changing, the head had to change. And there's a few ways that you can go about finding a new solution, and obviously geometry plays a role, but a lot of it is also material selection, and you're seeing that more in the marketplace today than probably ever, is just the utilization of different thermoplastics based on what an offensive player needs, a face-off guy needs, a goalie. And that's not even scratching the surface that our game is also played across a pretty wide variety of temperatures. And when you go into a lab and start looking at how things perform in cold versus heat, that adds another dynamic to what we're trying to solve. Because there's a balance. There's a lot of product solutions for our sport, but as our sport's pretty complex in all these positions, but we also commercially have to keep things pretty simple, so that yourself can digest what you need to get for either your kid or your team, because the typical consumer isn't totally in tune to why does a face-off guy need this setup, or a long stick midi need a totally different setup, or a close stick, it's kind of a lot. So our job from a product marketing standpoint is, even though all these guys are asking for all these different things, is how do we bring that into the line and then commercialize something that's simple and understandable.
How much input does your professional staff give you? And then do you take those products back out to, I'm assuming, the Paul Rabels and some of the folks in the world that represent Warrior? Do you take that thing back to them, or are they bringing ideas to you? And then the follow-up is, being this sort of product director at Warrior, you've got friends in the lacrosse world, so you go to a party. I'm sure everybody's got an idea or a thought process because, well, or they want the newest this or they want the newest that, and you're local. You're in Warren. It's not that far away. How much does that play into how much out of the office does that play a part of that?
So first question, athlete involvement. It's a big part of our process. And it goes back to when Warrior really, you think about like the late 90s when the World Games of 98, when Casey Powell, Mark Millen, I mean, the brand really took off with, it's because of the influence of athletes and the involvement. And it's something that's a big part of like who we are and how we innovate in our culture. So it's a two-way collaboration. Our athletes are always sharing with us what's working, not working. And then we're also sharing back what we're seeing, because we look at a lot of different things and, just the way we test in our laboratory. So it's kind of a two-way, and that's how things keep progressing and improving. And then we test out these concepts, test out these ideas, which allows kind of the innovation and evolution of products to continue to happen. So that's a key part. The second piece, the second question you had, in terms of ideas. Ideas, as product marketers and things, we're very balanced in our how we go about researching and getting feedback, because you can't be too one-dimensional, and also with ideas you can't be, that's a balancing act too. There's a lot of good ideas, there's a lot of bad ideas, but we always try to field and listen to them all, because sometimes one idea just leads to like something else, and that might be the idea that ultimately could revolutionize an item, change a fit, fix something. So we've always really made sure to have a mindset where we're really open, and we vet just about everything. And ideas come from everybody. They come from players. They come from our internal team. Whether it's customer service groups based on phone calls they're having with people, or our dealer base. Obviously, customers and consumers are a main piece too. But we factor it all in, and if even if an idea maybe it's been done, or we're usually pretty realistic and upfront, and it just is more conversational. But
when you're getting down to that final phases before we're starting to make prototypes, does science drive the discussion, or popular opinion within the world of people you talk to about that product drive that? I would think science would be, in terms of design, science would have to drive that bus quicker than player A who says, by the way, I think yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say early on in the days, things were probably pretty subjective. But now with the investment in our testing capabilities, our understanding of kind of the mechanics of how the game is played, the different athletes, we're data driven in most that we do, because you need to be able to measure and quantify what the problem is in order to know whether or not you're putting together a solution. And we're very fundamental in that. It's been a huge focus over the last 10, 15 years in terms of just how we've invested in equipment, our engineering staff, and it's vital. A sport that really does a good job of it is golf. Like they are probably, they're really far out there, but it's all data driven. There's still an element of feel and comfort. Sometimes comfort is hard to measure, so there are some things, but it's a balancing act. We're not, but the data really dictates and drives a lot of things. But the player involvement, the player response and feedback is kind of like what buttons up the last, call it 25% of something. And it's important.
I think of some of you talking about Evo and Burn and years kind of switch. Was Proton Warrior, am I correct on that?
No, that was FCI.
Okay, then I won't make my point. The point I do want to make, though, is that when you get a product that has a real following and it's a market leader, how much you sort of stay with the old wine the way it is because nobody really wants to change the taste because it's been a proven consistent winner over the years? Is that something that also factors in?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's something we've kind of adjusted our strategies a little bit of late. When you have something working, it is best to kind of stick with it and fine tune it. And we have a lot of items where they just need fine tuning. But over the course of my 10, 12 years, I also know maybe we're too radical on some items where we probably made too big of a change and lost what might have been the driving force of why something was doing really well. The good news is we've really simplified our portfolio. We're really laser focused in what we're offering and bringing to market. And what we've been digging into is build on what's working well, make refinements, and then areas where things really need to be then we do it. And like Burn helmets, kind of like one of those ones where we made a total transformation. Our Evo lacrosse heads have been a mainstay for a long period of time, and that's one of those ones where it just needs fine tuning and evolution. But it's as product people, that is sometimes you have to hold yourself back, that you don't go beyond and maybe lose a following in a product because you change something that people really like. And that comes through, you try to stay on top of that with market research and feedback and so on. But
I asked the question because I've got a house full of sticks hanging all over the place. And our household with my son was an Evo guy, and we had some Protons. We must have literally for like a museum, 98 Evo, a 99, a 2000, 2001. We kept buying heads because, they were used and they don't look a lot different and they all perform the same. And it's pretty interesting. How come Warrior's never gone? Has Warrior ever tested the wood market on shafts? Or is that a novelty? Is that a novelty within the world?
We have not researched anything with wood, even when I started. You think about it, the titanium shaft was basically, when that launched, that revolutionized the handle category, which was essentially wood and 6,000 aluminum at the time. And then over time, with the expansion of, like our Crypto Pro and Crypto Light line, wood just kind of faded. Unless, I know in box lacrosse, there's still an element. And then obviously, some of the wooden sticks that are still made to date. But yeah, no, our focus has been to continue to evolve, not down a wooden path. Aluminum is still something that we look into. Carbon fiber is a big focus for us now. And that's kind of how what we're working with here short term.
Can carbon fiber be a price point effective? And then is there a point in your product line? I look at Wilson A2000 baseball gloves where they were a little expensive and now they cost more than a mortgage. Yeah. And what happens with Wilson is they made an A2000, which used to be a fielder's glove, and now they make it in 300 versions, as you pointed out about narrowing your portfolio. Yeah. Wilson put themselves out of the business because people came behind and built a much more cost-effective glove that was as good as the A2000. So my point is there a price point on shafts specifically? And with carbon fiber and the cost of carbon fiber, I'm in the ski world where I'm actually on a pair of carbon fiber skis for this right now. I get shipped 2022 skis to use at the end of the season and then through the end of snow, send them back with a report. And I've already sent them back because it's like skiing on two 2x4s. You can't bend them, and it's just they put them way too far out there in the way they build these skis. My point is there a price factor, and is carbon fiber the kind of product you can use to build sticks at a reasonable rate, or even an expensive rate.
Yeah, and this year, so in the back half of this year, we'll be expanding our carbon fiber offering for handles into lower price points. So it can be done through just material research, seeing, all the, carbon fiber, there's a lot of variations of it, and there's other, resin content that can be utilized. So there's different grades of it. And then how much you use, plays a role. And, obviously carbon fiber, is, it's a lot of layering. So it's a pretty intense process to make it. But there is ways to design your product. There's material options where it can allow flexibility for price options. And we're probably, we'll be the first one this year, with essentially a carbon fiber shaft under $80.
Wow.
To date, it's been 100. So everybody's at like 100 or 140. But we're real excited about carbon fiber just because it allows us to be more innovative with how we design and who they're for. Where with extruded aluminum, it's pretty stagnant. You have you specify a wall thickness, and it's extruded, and it's pretty straightforward. Where with carbon fiber, we can manipulate things a little bit more,
Obviously,
which is exciting for us.
price drives everything. I get that. But is there in your head as a senior manager, is there a price for a shaft that that we can't go over? Is there a line out there someplace for heads and for shafts that you just kind of know that doesn't? Somebody brings you something from research and said, "Hey, by the way, I got this."
Yeah. Well, in our sport, and we and at Warrior, we've pushed the price envelope pretty much in every category.
Right.
And we've backed off a little bit from that. Obviously we're an innovative brand. We want to, we feel we're a premium performance brand. But yes, there's definitely a ceiling where you see significant volume changes, but we're not shy to, if we feel that it's going to provide value and an advantage, we're not shy to commercialize something and try to push the envelope. But through research, working with a lot of people in the category, we kind of get a gauge on if it's worthwhile or not, and then we do it or we hold.
Yeah, at Coca-Cola, it's sticker shock back in the late '80s as related to cars. That all of a sudden you look at sticker shock because cars had jumped the price when they had changed some of the rules, and sometimes I still think in athletics they're still sticker shock. Lots of conversations
as our game grows in new markets.
Yeah,
that's cost to play is a topic of discussion. In our category, and because as the game grows into newer, just new regions, new communities, that becomes more prevalent. When you're looking at a starter gear set, essentially to get outfitted with equipment and a helmet and a stick, you're approaching $200. So, it's not cheap. It can be to that sticker shock comment you had, but that's something that we're trying to offset as best we can.
It gets to be expensive with a lot of changes. We have the high school season, the college season starting up here. College season started, high school season probably 4 weeks away. There is a new mandate for goalies to have to wear a NOC-approved chest protector. Next year, some of the same equipment with shoulder pads and elbow pads have to have the same certification. I hear from parents, oh my gosh, they just want to sell more, chest protectors. We changed the rules, and kind of walk us through the certification of a product. And NOC is a national organization that was started in the 60s because of the event of helmets and the health problems with football that came out of the 40s and 50s, where in the old days when you used to get your bell rung, it turned out to be, we know now it's concussions. Yeah. And people die from those things. So the sporting industry yeah, the sporting good industry put together a self-funded organization to test equipment, which is Noxie. And so kind of walk through why a goalie should have to spend an extra $100 this year for a chest protector that if he gets hit in the sternum, he's not going to die. And I think that's what they don't get.
Yeah, it's all about player safety, and it's data driven. You know, there was a variety of studies that was conducted. You know, U.S. lacrosse was, at the forefront of reviewing that information and then sharing it with a governing body, or as a governing body, sharing it with the likes of Noxie on developing a standard. And it's not just lacrosse; it's baseball. So the same standard is going to apply to catchers in the game of baseball as well. But yeah, the data basically showed. And I don't know exact numbers off the top of my head, but essentially, there was enough events that occurred where players were going into cardiac arrest from essentially commotio cordis is kind of the term. The standard took standards don't come together quickly, and they develop over time, and then they get implemented. And in the end, this year, it was required for catchers in baseball and goalies in lacrosse that they wear a different piece of chest equipment. It looks pretty close to what you're used to seeing. It's just the construction within the sternum and cardiac zones are different. The way they're constructed and built is much different than what we were building them before. And that's to keep them safe against commotio cordis. So it's safety driven. This is not a commercial opportunity. It wasn't driven by manufacturers or anything like that. It's strictly based on events that occurred within our sport and communities, and that's ultimately what drove it. And depending on where you're at, like a lot of things, it's not like concussions. So a lot of people aren't familiar with commotio cordis, but when you go into communities that have been impacted, I mean, it's not something you want to have happen to one of your kids, one of your players, teammates. So that's the goal, is to keep people safe in the game. And next year, the all field players will be required to wear a commotio certified piece of equipment.
I find it interesting that sometimes armchair quarterbacks who think they know rules will quote a pro rule for a high school sport, or they'll quote a college rule for a high school sport. As a long-term official, rules are made at the high school level for safety. And there are more safety rules in high school than there are as they move up the ladder. But there's probably 50 rule changes in football between high school and college, and then probably another 20 between college and the pros. And all that factors into the same kinds of things you're suggesting. The compression rates of the balls are even different now that they're making. They're making with less oil. And consequently, sometimes when they hit with a much harder impact. And I think sometimes we forget that. It's not, you want to keep kids safe, and I think that's kind of what drives the bus. And I think sometimes that message gets lost. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I don't know if loss is the word. I just think it's
misunderstood.
It takes time. It takes time to get the message out there.
Yeah.
And this recent one with chest pads, it's been being talked about in our world for a few years now. But it's just, we're a small community in lacrosse, but these type of things are open my eyes, is we're not that small, because it does take soak time and for these things to get out. And then understanding the root of why it's there. It's like telephone. Like I have a conversation with you about how it came about. You go talk to somebody, and that guy goes and talk, and the message can change.
Right.
Next thing you know, like the mom's like, "Oh, it's some manufacturer that's trying to make a bunch of money." And no, it started with obviously it's a safety piece.
The reason we're covering the subject is that it's nice to do interviews with some of the PLL guys and some of the guys, some of the big time coaches we talk to.
Yeah.
But I want to be able to branch out this year. We've got an Oxy guy coming on in a couple of weeks. He's going to explain the certification process and some of the history. I hear as a high school coach, I hear as just an administrator for lacrosse, for youth lacrosse, I hear conversations every day about just the information that is just incorrect. They don't know. And I'm not suggesting that they're supposed to know, but you can't knock something. And when you come across, if somebody comes up to me and says the sky is green, I'm going to have a discussion with them that maybe it's not. And I think that's kind of part of that process. So that's one of the reasons that I wanted to be able to have a conversation with somebody who's in the business of developing products for the crop.
And I hear and see that in my interactions too. And I think there's an opportunity as manufacturers, as governing bodies, as dealers to improve on messaging. And I think that is a focus moving forward too, because the other thing about our sport is there has been a lot of change, and when there's so much change, it can be a challenge to keep up with it all.
Sure.
So I think as a sport, that's something we got to think about too. But yeah, communication. I mean, it's not unheard of that there can be gaps. But all of us that are involved in this, we just have to, really work hard and keep things simple and thorough, so people are understanding of it.
Last question, and I appreciate the time you spent with us. Last question, if I could pick up the sheet and look under the sheet of maybe what's next. Can you give us some insight to what the next great generation? I don't have to be real specific, but is there anything that we're going to be surprised about in the next 18 months?
Well, yeah, I mean, I just finished up the line. We're finishing up the line right now that you're going to be seeing kind of go to market here over the next, call it 6 to 12 months. We're kicking off 22, 23 as we speak. Technology can happen pretty quick. Innovation can happen pretty quick. A big thing for us is we're going to stick true to our, kind of our core competencies, and that's, heads, shafts, and helmets. You're going to see us continue to push, carbon fiber. You're going to continue to see more innovation within heads to combat, the issues that we see, with consistency and things in our sport. But, I wouldn't say you're going to see anything super radical. I think you're just going to see much better versions of what is out in front of you today. And
I went through briefly went through your annual report last night that's online. Just curious. I find as you condense your profile of market of product, your market share has gone up. It hasn't gone up like through the roof, but it seems the last 5 years you guys have had 5 really good years. And I think with the addition of the Burn helmet, I think that market share is going to start even taking a more upward climb than it was, because I think that's something that you've always made. I'm still wearing Warrior, the rain suit. I've got several of the rain suits that I've had. I have to just keep changing the logo on the damn thing. But I wear it a lot because it's never worn out and it looks brand new. And that's not by mistake. It's because you built a great product. And I think that's kind of
doing this for a while.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Yeah.
But the Lax Bro has kind of left the sort of special Warrior thing, and I think you're a mainstream product. But I like I said, if you look at your P&L and you look at your annual report, you guys are really starting to put your teeth into the market share, and I think partly is because you're bringing even better products to the marketplace. I think that's something that's important to you and for the kids, because it's, again, this isn't the Pennsylvania lacrosse review, it's the Michigan lacrosse review. You guys are located in Warren. And the last thing I would mention is whenever the company has been really good when it comes to charity. If kids need sticks, and you guys have got all kinds of programs that you've donated a ton of stuff to for a variety of reasons. And I don't know that always gets publicized like it should. And that's something that you should be able to, the company and the management should be very happy with as consumers of the product and as recipients of the charity. We appreciate all that you guys have done for the marketplace.
No, we're glad to help. We want people participating in the sport, having fun. So many of us have been able to. The game's done a lot for us, and we want the next generation of lacrosse players to kind of experience that as well.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask one last question. I'm the current men's coach at Oakland University, a team you played for in the golden era. Is there any words of wisdom that you can give this new edition of what we're trying to emulate, the 2002, 3, 4, and 5 teams? You guys had one of the, with the exception of the Michigan contingent of all those years, you guys had a pretty darn good MCLA team.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. We were our team was lean. I mean, I don't think we had more than like 17, 18 guys, but I think what was key, we had some talent, but I think just culturally we knew we wanted to take that program to another level, and we wanted to win, and that really drove so many of us. And we did a lot of winning in our time there, but that was just it just comes down to goal setting, and what led to that, and that meant getting into the gym, shooting, and working on our craft. And everybody was bought in. Fall ball was serious. We would go and compete. Coach Hicks, did a great job of scheduling us against some good opponents, and we just we put in the effort, put in the time, and that's what you have to do there, because and you really have to be driven, individually and as a group to hold each other accountable, because playing in kind of that club varsity world, it's different than playing for a varsity program where things are so very scheduled and required. So you kind of have to take ownership of your own destiny there. But I think it was big for a lot of us, just in terms of how we've gone into our family life and our professional life. When you look at a lot of the guys that are involved in those teams, they're all doing tremendous things. And it comes from kind of learning how to be self-motivated and goal-oriented.
The club model is a different animal. I spent 10 years driving back and forth. I live a half a mile from Oakland University, and I spent 10 years driving back and forth coaching the Michigan State women's. And now I get the chance to go across the street. And I honestly believe if we can keep some kids home and have some success, I think it can be as good of an MCLA program as there is. We showed we could do it in early 2000s. You have more kids. You have more kids to choose from now than you did then. Yeah, there's no doubt.
It only takes a handful of good ones, and then that was kind of the big thing. Once like I ended up committing and going there, and there was a few others already there, and then it just kind of started the classes after us. Once people started seeing that there was talented kids going there, playing there, and we were winning, it just kind of started to snowball. And the next thing you know, kids were transferring back from wherever they were or enrolling new. So people want to be part of a winning culture, but a big part will be is the buy-in from the athletes.
Well, we have 27 on the roster, which is the biggest roster they've had in a while. So we'll see if that works. But listen, I appreciate your time and your effort. It's been a great company, and you've been a great discussion partner to have for this. Yep. And Billy, I can't tell you how much it's meant to the rest of us, and I appreciate your time.
Yeah, this was great. Obviously, good luck this year at Oakland, and thank you for your business on the helmet order too.
Thanks again.
All right, you take care.